What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is another episode of New England Cigar Militia Live. I'm your host, The Commish. Today, we got an episode that I proclaim very special to myself because I got a fellow cigar smoker that I smoke cigars with almost every night, and he has a very special talent. He makes bass guitars from scratch. So, without further ado, this episode of New England Cigar Militia Live. Special guest, Brady Muckelroy from Muckelroy Bass Guitars. As he says, get a muck. Bam! What's going on? What's happening, brother? How we doing?
Good.
I'm pretty amped to have you today on the show. I mean, we've been talking about this for a while. I've been watching you work, and more work. 80, 90, 100 degree weather. You're out here putting out some of the best bass guitars I've ever seen in my life. So that's why I was like, you know what? We smoke cigars every night. It's only right to get you on the show, chit chat, learn about what you do. Because what you do to me is amazing. I can't even build the stock on the bass guitar. Never mind build the bass guitar. So how's it going over there? Where you are?
It's good. It's hot in Texas. You know, we've got a high today of about 105, and that's not accounting for the heat index with the humidity. So it probably feels like 110 outside right now.
And it's hot in your shop too, huh?
Inside, yeah. In my inside part right now, it's 92, and it's going to creep up as the day goes on. So that's part of having an AC that doesn't work very well.
Oh, we got a whole bunch of people already in here. What's up? Boom. Boom. Everybody chiming in already. What's up, Commish? If anybody has any, what up, Brady Muckelroy? But they didn't say their name, so I don't know who they are. So you need to allow Facebook to see your names. Cool. I am a guitar player as well, over 20 years. So if you have any questions, excuse the sirens in the background. Unfortunately, they're going to save somebody. Hopefully they save them. If you have any questions for Brady while we go on with this, just feel free to chime in. I'll click them up on the screen, and Brady can talk about them. Daniel Rhodes is in the building.
Nice.
Does he still owe you a cigar?
No, he got it to me.
He got it. It finally made it to you.
Came through.
So what's going on, Brady, with you? So as I know, you've been doing this for how many years have you been making bass guitars?
I started the company in 2010, so I'm in my 10th year, coming up on 11.
Coming up on 11 years. And how did you start making these bass guitars? What made you wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to make bass guitars?
A lot of things, really. Unlike a lot of builders, I did not go to guitar building school. They call it luthier's school. And I came at this from a very instinctual place. And what happened, long story short, around 2008, this is when the economy tanked, right? And that hurt a lot of white collar people. And I was at the time just a self-employed full-time musician. And I didn't think that economy downturning was going to affect me at all. But for some reason it did. All my residency gigs just went away. It's kind of like having the rug yanked out from underneath me. And 2008 was a rough year. I mean, that was the year my first kid, my daughter, was born. Hardly any gigs on the books. It's really hard to support a family on a musician's income, right? I ended up having to sell a lot of gear just to pay bills. At that point, I had about 7 years of doing instrument repair under my belt. And I had a lot of people encouraging me, saying, "Hey, man, you should build. You should full on build. You'd be great at it." And I'd say, "Oh, thanks. That's very kind of you," but never was it on my radar. It never was. So fast forward a few years later, I'm just kind of looking at where I am and thinking to myself, I may as well give it a try. I mean, what do I have to lose, right? So I went ahead and gave it a shot, and it stuck.
So now, did you know you had this talent to just make a bass guitar? That's how you would say it, bass guitar, right?
Yeah, it's a bass
From
guitar.
scratch.
It's kind of like a guitar, except that it's bigger, longer. The strings are bigger, the amps are bigger. Therefore, it's more important.
More of a workhorse, basically.
I joke. If there's any guitar players in the room, I love you too. I focus on the basses. That's what that's what I play. That's what I build. That's what I feel like I can offer my best quality at.
Now, when you started doing it, it seems like it takes a lot of work. I mean, how much is an average bass guitar? How long does it take to make an average bass guitar? Not something of your caliber that you're up to now. Because, I mean, obviously when you first started, it was kind of like a wingdale, right? You didn't really know, where you were going to head to and how you were going to make these bass guitars from scratch, right?
Yeah, I think once I figured out, somewhat what I was doing, I got to the point to where I could build a bass start to finish in about 80 hours of labor.
Wow, so 2 weeks worth of labor.
Yeah, and that's rushing it, I'd say, at that point in time. I have really simple, very basic builds that I make that probably rack up a maximum of 50, maybe 60 hours of labor. And then I have really complex builds, something like this, with all kinds of fancy accent laminates. And there's a lot to this. This one exceeded 200 hours easy.
Oh, wow.
Not to mention a joint effort, because this has a clear hard finish on it. This is something that I outsource for. There's a lady up in Wisconsin that does this kind of finish, and she's totally outfitted for it. And, she probably invested 15, 20 hours easy into that finish alone. So, yeah, there's a lot of time and blood, sweat, and tears that goes into making a fine handmade instrument from scratch. It's not just it's not taking a pre-made body and a pre-made neck and slapping them together and calling yourself a master luthier. That's a different thing, right? You're a parts assembler at that point. And there are people that do that. There's guys that hit up various companies that make bodies and necks that look a lot like a Fender, and they buy these things. They're pre-made. They slap them together, and they put strings on it, and they call themselves a builder. And that's great if you want to think that, but it's that whole situation where one of these things is not like the other, right? When you look at what I'm doing or what any other small builder that makes these things from scratch is doing, gosh, there's so much, Commish. I mean, driving up to Austin to the lumber yard and picking out the lumber, right? If you can see behind me, I got a shelf full of wood, and there's more shelves full of wood. I pick each one of those boards out by hand. I feel the weight. I knock on them. I listen to the resonance. There's certain things that I'm looking for. And if I just had someone randomly ship me a truckload of whatever lumber, I don't know what the heck I'm getting. And I don't have any control over the quality at that point. So there's that. There's letting it season in my shop and acclimate. There's processing it. There's all of the machinery that it takes to do that. There's so much I could bore everybody with everything that goes into making a bass. But it is definitely a passion of mine, and it's something I really enjoy doing, as you well know.
I mean, when you say you could bore everybody with it, I mean, when it comes down to it, it's absolute talent. You know what I'm saying? It's definitely not the process may be boring, but the outcome is absolutely freaking amazing. It's like looking at gold
Yeah,
in a different form. You know what I mean? It's artwork, and like I said, I don't play guitars. I don't play basses. I really know anything about basses, but I've learned a little bit from you. But it is absolutely phenomenal, and it's crazy how you make that from a couple pieces of wood.
yeah.
It,
Well, I think with a lot of guys that do what I do, they got into that profession because of a struggle as a bass player. Uh, and I think I've been through the same thing where before I was building basses, I played some nice basses, and I'd play XYZ, plug in the brand name bass, and it was nice, but I wish it did more of this or sounded more like that. I wish it had a different scale length, or I wish it had a more narrow body, right? So basically, I couldn't find what I was actually looking for as a player. So I just got fed up enough to the point where I decided to build it myself. And fortunately, what I build has been very well received in the bass playing community.
Now, are you just in the 50 states, or do you have people that buy across the world?
We're worldwide. Yeah. There's a few in Australia. There's a couple in Alaska, which is, I know it's US, Canada, Japan, Tokyo, UK. Let's see. There's a guy in the Virgin Islands bought one. I mean, it's all over the place. Let's see. There's a few down in South America.
Wow.
A few in Mexico. So yeah, they're getting around.
So you really did it. You woke up one morning in 2008, and you just started making bass guitars, and now you're worldwide with bass guitars. Something you probably never imagined. I would assume. I mean,
Yeah, in
you
hindsight,
could.
I can see how everything I was going through was pointing me in this direction.
Well, as I was saying, you probably never imagined you'd be worldwide. You obviously
No,
took a shot at what you were doing, and you knew you could make a bass guitar. But did you know that you would be, Brady Muckelroy bass guitars?
no, never thought that. It was nowhere on my radar. I mean, when I came at this, I didn't have a lick of business sense, right? I entered this profession from a very creative, artistic point of view, and that was what I was driving this thing with, was this need to create a better bass that satisfied my needs as a player. And I had to learn through trial and error how to run a business.
Which sometimes is the hardest part. I mean,
It is. And I've seen other companies that started up just like me, guys that were really talented that made really nice instruments that didn't make it past the 5-year mark. I've seen them come and go, more than I wish I can admit that I've seen, but I've seen it. And, there's nothing you can do to bail some of those guys out because they've just made enough mistakes. I'm fortunate, man, because I made some mistakes, let me tell you. Business mistakes. It's a wonder I'm still standing, but I had enough people in my corner, and I've got a very patient, gracious wife that has supported me, and put up with me starting this company. Golly, man, the first year or two of me starting this business, I was a wreck because I couldn't turn my brain off. I was constantly running scenarios and formulating how to do this better and how to do that better. I was never really present, at home. It was it's kind of funny to think about it now, but yeah, that's what it takes. I mean, I had to start something from nothing. All I had was a dream and some designs on paper, and I didn't know how I was going to get there, but I knew somehow I had to figure it out and get there.
Now,
And
what was the first time you ever played a bass guitar? When did you wake
I
up and
started playing bass back in 1998. Some buddies of mine at a local church, they wanted to start a Wednesday night youth service, for the junior high and high school kids. And my best at the time, not being a bass player, I was a drummer and a pianist. I've got a background in percussion and classical piano. Well, my best friend in high school, he was a drummer, and he was drumming. And then the other instrument I play, keys. Well, our youth pastor was the keyboardist in the group, and I'm like, all right, guys, good luck with your band. One night, I knew they were down at the church rehearsing, and I was bored, so I drove down there just to go watch them. What I did not know was earlier that day, they had a little powwow, and they went to the pawn shop, and they bought a little raggedy bass guitar for like $80. And it was sitting on the front row in this pew at this church they're practicing in. I walked in there, saw that bass sitting there, and I sat down next to it, and I picked it up. And, I didn't have an amp, but I just put my ear to the body and tuned it. I knew what notes you were supposed to tune a bass to. And then I kind of started fiddling along, playing along with what they were playing on stage, and they saw me doing this. After they're done rehearsing, they came to me and they said, "You're going to play bass for us." And I kid you not, man, 2 days later, we were doing an outreach in this trailer park under a pavilion, and I'm standing there playing bass. Boom, boom. But it was functional bass. So I was literally thrown into it. No lessons. I mean, I had a background in music. I understood music, but I knew nothing about bass guitar and playing the bass and technique. So I had to just kind of figure it out as I went. And, I've played professionally for over 20 years and made some ripples in the solo bass world. Been really fortunate to have done some things that not a lot of players get to do. And I carry that playing experience with me as a builder. Now, being an active player and being really particular about the instrument and what it allows me to do as a player, for me, that's the means by which these basses are tested. It's kind of like, okay, you wouldn't want a cigar blender making cigars who doesn't smoke them, right? Just like if you went to a sandwich shop, you want someone making your sandwich that has eaten a sandwich, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've been to Subway a few times. I'm pretty sure I got a sandwich that was made by someone that has never consumed one. But it's important for me, being a bass builder, that I am still actively playing every day, even if it's for 30 minutes, just to keep it fresh. Because for me, I have to play these things and be sure they're right and they're to my standards before they leave the shop. If they don't light me up, they don't leave, and that's how it is.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a couple times there have been a few basses that I remember out of almost 500. They were being stubborn. They weren't quite dialing in the way I needed them to. And I told the client, it's like, look, I know you paid your final installment. I know we said the bass is ready to go, but it's not quite ready to go. I need to hold on to it for another week or two. Let me babysit it and just get it right for you before I get it shipped off to you. And I'm glad I did, because when they got it, they were truly happy with it, and it's still serving them well today, 5, 6, 7 years later. And I'm real big on QC. It's my name on the headstock. It's my name on this banner behind me. So even if, let's say I had employees, which I don't right now, I'm a one-man operation. But let's say I had employees and somebody made a mistake that slipped past me. Well, that mistake falls on my shoulders. There's a lot of parallels I'm seeing with what I do and the cigar industry. Somebody gets a bad, let's say they get a bad Rocky Patel or a bad Perdomo, or you fill in the blank, right? Well, it wasn't Rocky or Nick that made the mistake. It was one of the rollers or someone that packaged it, but it falls on that name of that person, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that brand association, well, that's me. And I'm able to maintain the highest quality control if my hands are on these things from start to finish. instead of having a bunch of people in here, um, delegating tasks that normally I could do in 20 minutes, but it takes them over an hour. I mean, yeah, it's a tricky thing. I've had a few employees in the past, and for the most part, they did well, but ultimately they didn't work out the way I needed them to. So,
because you're so used to you got a certain way everything needs to be done, and if it's not done the way you want it to be, then you need to redo the whole thing probably. And that's
yeah, I spent, there were times where there were employees, if let's say they made a little mistake, well, I would have to spend a lot of time undoing that mistake to make it right for the next step in the build. And every time I have to sidestep or backstep like that, that puts me further behind. And there came points where I had to just kind of lose that whole idea of time is money, and just invest the time in training, to get that employee or employees up to where they were at a level to where I could delegate tasks.
Said a lot of knowledge is what I'm hearing so far. Great episode. Gentlemen,
it's so difficult to let go, right? Like just recently, I've got an apprentice that I've been working with for a little over a year now, and his schedule's been sporadic. He's come in once a week, twice a week, maybe, but he's to the point to where if, let's say, I were to have him back in, I could easily say, hey, this base needs sanding. Go out and take care of it. And I'll give him all the time he needs, because sometimes he'll take a little longer than it would be if it were me doing it, but he'll do it right. And that's fine. I'd much rather somebody take their time and get something right than rush it to meet a time quota and then me have to go back and spend double the time correcting a mistake.
Exactly, you got to double back on it.
Yeah. It's like, what am I paying for, right? It's like that with any product. Take your time, do it right. Think about cigars. Take your time, age them. Who wants to buy something and then have to put it on the shelf for 2 years? Not me.
Yeah, how many bass guitars have you made so far since you started?
So with my brand, we're in the mid 400s. When I started out in this particular shop, I was working alongside another company called Birdsong Guitars, and there are about 150 to 180. I'd have to go back and get with Scott. But there's over 100 bird songs out there that I built. So, roughly 550 to 600 instruments I've built. So I do, an average about 50 a year. That number is going to get a little closer to 80 or 90 this year at the rate things are going.
Which you've been doing good through the whole coronavirus thing?
Yeah, man. So coronavirus was something that, as you well know, and I think all of us can relate to, it's forced a lot of people to have to think really quickly on our feet and adapt and change the way we do things. It certainly did me. When I say when we all kind of got into this thing, coronavirus, there was 1 week where I was scheduled to collect 3 deposits from bass players on custom builds, and we're talking high-end builds, right? Like $5,000 and $6,000 basses. We had already had the long conversations, inspect everything out, and they were scheduled to put in their deposits. And I was expecting to collect about $6,500 that day. And all 3 of them did call me, which is amazing, because sometimes bass players don't they don't do what they say they're gonna do. They all called me and they all 3 said the same thing. They're like, look, man, I've got the money, it's ready to go, but I don't know what's gonna happen with this coronavirus thing, so I'm gonna hold on to it. And I said, hey, I get it. Because being a bass player myself, I lost all my gigs. We all lost our gigs. I mean, the next gig I had on the calendar was October 31st. That got postponed to November the 6th of 2021.
Oh, wow. A whole year.
I got nothing, There are no gigs anywhere right now. Some people in certain towns are playing some outdoor things, but my area, the Austin, Texas area, there's just nothing going on. All the bars are shut down. There's no live music venues doing anything. So I resorted to occasionally jumping online on Facebook and doing a live video of me playing. And that's fine. There's an audience. It's something people can go back and watch later.
Mm-hmm.
But so I got to thinking, it's like, all right, I'm going to have a bunch of people that are holding on to their money. Everyone's a little on edge because they don't know if they're going to get gigs or they don't know how they're going to make money. Fast forward about 2 more weeks, I had a couple guys that I had already built bases for. And I mean, let me tell you, Commish, these bases for these guys, they were dreams come true, right? They scrimped and they saved and they put their hard-earned money in these things. And when I built them, it was a dream come true, and they got them and they cherished those instruments, and they ended up having to sell them just to put food on the table because they lost their jobs.
Horrible, man.
And that hit me pretty hard, right? That got me really thinking on this. And I'd say for a good 1.5 years, 2 years, I've been pondering ways that I could turn out an instrument that was a little bit more budget friendly, to where I can still make money, but get more instruments out there in the hands of players that need them. If it's their source of income, if they're studio musicians, or just guys that need a good bass that don't want to spend $3,000 at the starting point. I've worked really hard in 10 years to build my brand, to command the prices to where I can actually make money to the point to where I can keep the lights on in the shop, right? I can't just give them away. I mean, there's a family to feed, there's overhead. Bills are very consistent. They just keep on coming. They don't care if you didn't get paid or not. And being self-employed, you never know when you're going to get paid. The problem with that was my entry point for a bass for me was about $3,000. And that's above what some bass players are ever going to be able to do. So I got to looking at my construction methods, and I found a building method that I'm the most efficient at. And this surprised a lot of people. It's a build method called neck through. Neck through is where the neck of the instrument runs all the way through the body. And let me grab one real quick. I'll show you. I'll be right back.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I'll put up your questions that you have here. If anybody has questions for Brady, let me know.
So this is a neck through bass. If you look on the back, you can see that the neck runs all the way through.
It's all one piece.
Yeah.
Wow. Unreal. Yeah, you don't leave a scratch. You don't leave a nick. Nothing like nothing left unsaid. If you know what I'm saying, they're to the T.
Yeah.
You probably can't even sleep at night if you make one mistake.
So that building method for me has the most streamlined process I found. And I decided to do a neck through model that's very simple. It doesn't have any fancy tops, no boutique stuff. It's very simple. I limited the wood options for the body wings. I limited the fingerboard options. The pickups, the electronics, those are all very standardized. And those are coming in. They start just under $2,000. And I got to tell you, man, they're selling like hotcakes. So in the midst of coronavirus, my business is the strongest and busiest I think it's been in as long as I can remember. There's been a time or two, 2016 was the first time I hit over 40 builds in the queue. And that was built up over the course of about 5 months of orders. I started with about 20, and then all of a sudden there were just a bunch of orders that just flooded me, and I was fine with that, but it was a little overwhelming at the same time. I've been holding steady at about 42 for the past 2 months.
I mean, you go from worrying if you're gonna have a business because of everything that's going on. Nobody's playing.
Yeah.
coronavirus, everybody's
Yeah.
getting on to I can't stop working because I got too much work.
And dude, it's been great. I'm finally, yes, I'm busy, but I'm building these things in batches, so things are very streamlined. I'm getting time and a half done when I do them in batches that way. So it's working fine. It helps me tend to the really high end custom stuff more freely, right? I don't have to penny pinch and wonder if I'm going to be able to order pickups and hardware for those high end bases, where I've got enough cash flow coming in because of these workhorses. I'm able to just order supplies when I need them.
So it's kind of like how a cigar guy, perfect example is Steve Saka. He's a perfect example. Steve Saka makes a high-end cigar, a couple medium cigars, a couple low-end cigars, and he uses the scraps from the cigars he don't use to make those lower-end cigars. So it's like he's putting them all together. So he kind of bounces back and forth. So that's pretty much what you do. So you'll be making those workhorse bases, but at the same time, you'll step away and create a high-end base at the same time, pretty much, right?
Yeah. And the thing is, they're all high quality. It's just the material cost that goes into that, what we call high end, is exponentially more than what goes into a workhorse.
So I have a couple questions here for you, Brady. I'm going to ask you. I have a question. So Jerry Anderson asked, where does he get his drive and passion from, and how do you maintain it?
Good. That's a great question, Jerry. It's hard to identify what causes that drive and that passion, but I would say it's always been there. Obviously, I'm passionate about what I do. It lights me up. I tell people I get to do this, right? In a way, I'm living the American dream because I started something from nothing and built it into something, right? I'm not going to deny that. It is definitely something. Muckelroy basses are becoming a more known name in the bass guitar community, and I'm really happy about that. That's the goal, of course, is I want to get more recognition. I want to get known. When people start talking about boutique, custom basses, yes, I want my name to come up in that conversation. What maintains it? I think my clients and my friends that see what I do, I get a lot of daily affirmation that what I'm doing is a good thing. I'll get random texts or emails from clients that I built basses for 6-7+ years ago. Even if it's simple as, hey man, I got my bass out today and I just played it for 2 hours and it made me so happy. Thank you for doing that. That's the kind of stuff that lights me up. That makes my week. Every now and then I'll get a YouTube link where someone did a video and they're playing one of my basses and they're sounding phenomenal. And they're like, I couldn't do this on my Fender or my whatever brand bass. Thank you. This thing lets me play what I feel. Things like that. That helps maintain it. About a week ago, my wife and I were standing in the kitchen and we're going through bills. And she's like, they're really stacking up. I said, I think it's okay. I can handle it. She's like, releasing that entry-level model, that was the smartest thing you ever did. I said, wait a minute, what about marrying you? So I hope that answers your question, Jay. I think there's daily affirmation. It's also it's a personal decision, right? When you truly love something and you're passionate about it, you have to make that decision every morning to get up and show up, right? Mentally, I've got to show up. If I don't get to the shop and I'm not in the right headspace, I'm not going to be productive. I might do the work per se, but if my heart and my head are not in it, I feel like I'm compromising the end product. And there's been days where I'm not in it. I show up, I'm like, I don't think I'm going to do any work in here today because I don't feel like I can give my best to it. And I owe it to myself and to my customers to offer my best. And if I compromise that, I'm just shooting myself in the foot and I'm tarnishing my own legacy. I don't want that.
Which makes perfect sense. I mean, everybody has their bad day, and I mean, quality is key. Quality over quantity.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Adam Machado asked, "What's one of the craziest builds you've done?"
You want to see it?
Of course, I want to see it.
I got one in the works. I'll be right back. One sec. All right. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
10 strings.
10 string.
Wow.
Fretless. It's a big boy.
Wow.
This is for a client. This guy plays these big basses. All right. Now, you might be wondering what this big bathtub route is. That's where the pickups are going to go. I actually made what's called a ramp, and it's matching. It's maple with a piece of Purple Heart down the middle, and it's hollow, but it's like a rectangular box, and the pickups were built into that box and epoxied solid. So it's going to go right in there like one solid pickup, but there's going to be one in front and one in back, and the whole thing is adjustable. So his fingers will have something to glide over when he plays this monster thing. This is my first 10 string. Other than 10, I have built a few 7 strings, plenty of 6s, tons of 5s, tons of 4s. But this is what is referred to as an extended range bass. This goes lower than the lowest note on a piano. It gets down there.
That thing is absolutely phenomenal.
And this fingerboard, this is called Catalouche, Katalox. Looks like Catalux.
Sounds expensive.
It's also sometimes referred to as Mexican ebony. This is all one piece. This lighter stuff is referred to as sapwood. So it's kind of like getting close to the live bark edge, but it's still as hard as the purple stuff. So there you have it. This is probably the most crazy build that I will finish up this year. Next step on this one is to get it sanded and oiled. I had to have a custom bridge made for this thing from this company I use called Hipshot. They'd never made one this wide with that many strings. So that was expensive because they had to write the CNC program for it.
So is this guy a big guy? Like, is he like huge or something?
No, no, he's not. I mean, and on top of that, he's lost a lot of weight this year. But he is just he's more of like a metalhead, plays in these real progressive, hard, like metal type bands, and he plays these massive basses from other builders that do the extended range thing. So now you wouldn't take something like this to a Friday night blues gig. You just wouldn't. You'd get laughed off stage. This is for playing solo music by yourself.
How much do you think that weighs?
Right now, we're about 9.5, 10 pounds. After hardware and the pickups and everything, it's going to be about a 13-pound instrument, which is still really lightweight for something this big. Set this back.
Wow. That was amazing. Here's another question for you. Has anyone famous played your bass in concert? If not, who would you dream of making a bass for?
Let's see. Is that Mike?
Yeah, that's Mike.
Okay. So Mike, you may have heard of the band Blues Traveler. Their bass player is named Tad Kinchla. Tad plays a few of my basses. I actually have another one hanging on the wall in the works for Tad. Let's see. There was a guitar virtuoso in Austin named Monty Montgomery. His bass player of, gosh, I don't know how long David played with Monty. A guy named David Piggott. He's one of my artists. He's playing my basses. Other than that, There is a pretty renowned jazz bass player who's highly published. He does a lot of education, named Todd Johnson. He's more known in the academic side of the bass community. He's quite the teacher. He plays butt off, and he's great. He's fantastic. If I could, like the dream player, gosh, someone big like Victor Wooten or Marcus Miller or Steve Bailey or, some big name bass player. But all of those guys, they have long-standing relationships with the companies that they endorse.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as I'd love to have someone like that, I don't feel that it's my place to be the wrecking ball and mess up a good thing. And quite frankly, a lot of those guys that are of that stature, like they're the top in the world and they're at the top of their game, they're with those companies, A, because they believe in them, they stand by them, but B, those companies are also big enough that they can support that artist to go out and promote the company. We're talking larger companies where I'm a one-man operation. I don't have an artist budget, right? I've got some artists that endorse my company, and the perk of them being an artist is they get a discount. They get a little bit of a discount on the instrument, and I'll plug them. But it's simply that. The artist endorses the company. It's not the other way around. Some people come into that whole thing with a misconception. They think, yeah, I'm awesome. I'm a great bass player. I'm going to go to this company and they're going to give me an endorsement, meaning they're going to give me a free bass and I'm going to get a free bass and have it. And that's it. Well, that's not it. You got to work for that endorsement. You've got to work to help that company grow. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And something else that I think some artists, even present day, miss out on is if they do the right thing and they do help the company grow, you're going to watch the value of that company go up, which means the prices are going to go up, which if you're still getting your artist discount, that means you're going to be paying a little bit more than what you paid 3 or 4 years ago. Right. I've confronted a few artists about that because they came to me for another bass and they were expecting to pay X amount of dollars when no, it's actually gone up. I'm still giving you, 30, 40, 50% off whatever tier they're on. But, thank you for your hard work. Because of your hard work, we've raised the value of this company. And I'm still willing to give you this percentage off. Someday I want to get a cigar endorsement.
Right, that'd be amazing, huh?
See if I can get Tatuaje or Padron to endorse me.
Don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure there's a few guys that do play instruments. I'm pretty sure Pete played some instruments, which Mike Collins can chime in on that one more than me. I'm pretty sure Pete told me before he was in a band, the Pete from Tatuaje. I heard that. I think Perdomo plays the drums.
Yeah, Nick is a drummer. Yeah.
And then you got Matt Booth, which Mike Collins is chiming in on Matt Booth, which Matt Booth is hilarious. Matt Booth he comes out of left field with everything he says. You got also too, you got Boston Jimmy too. Boston Jimmy, he has some older I don't know if they're bass guitars, I think they're regular guitars. Yeah. Boston Jimmy plays the guitar too.
If we've seen him on Dojo, I think I know the guy you're talking about, and yeah, I think he said he's a bass player. So
Nick has an incredible drum kit.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of it. It's massive. I'm taking it. Nick is a massive Neil Peart fan. Neil Peart from Rush. I mean, he's got the kit that just wraps totally around him, 360. I think the only thing Nick doesn't have on his setup is a gong.
Yeah, Boston Jimmy plays the bass too. Boston Jimmy said he has a Fender Music Master bass.
Okay.
1976.
Muck.
It's from the same year Boston Jimmy was born, 1976.
All right.
I gave Boston Jimmy a few years there. Pert is the shiznit. That's what Mike Collins said. Pert is the shiznit.
Yeah. Yeah, we lost him just recently here. It's a sad day. Well,
Now,
people might not know about me. I'm also a drummer. I don't know if I mentioned that.
I was going to say that. What other instruments do you play? So you play the drums?
Yeah, so I started classical piano the day I turned 5, thanks to my mom. She started me in classical piano lessons, and that I did that till I was 13. So musically, I'm rooted in classical piano. That was my foundation for everything. That overlapped with percussion. I started percussion in 6th grade band, and having the musical foundation from piano, that allowed me to take to percussion quite well. I understood music theory and rhythm and had a strong sense of all that. So percussion was very natural for me. And then, out of high school in the late 90s, getting into college, that's when I started playing bass. Bass to me was like combining elements of both what I knew from piano and percussion all on one instrument. And I took the bass quite naturally and stuck with it ever since. I still drum professionally to this day. It surprises people sometimes when they hear me drum because they don't know I do that. But I'm like, yeah, that's actually where I have my schooling in. That's what I went to school for, was to be a music education major in percussion.
And Kevin Gold just jumped in here and said hi.
Hey, Kevin.
Adam said my bass is a Frankenstein. The only thing original on it is the body and the neck.
Okay. Back when I was doing repair work, I've seen plenty of Franken basses. I have.
That's what made you start making instruments, huh?
Well, it's part of it. Like I mentioned, I had done about 7 to 8 years of repair work, and that helped me get into a lot of instruments and find out what makes them tick. Figure out what makes them good or what doesn't make them good, and figure out how to debug those things that will work against it playing well. And that gave me an advantage. I basically learned what not to do by fixing a lot of bad instruments. And a lot of times they weren't bad instruments. It's just whoever built them didn't go that last 5%. They half-assed it right at the very end. If they would have just done a little bit better on the fingerboard work and the fret work, it would have played really nicely.
And why the hell would you do that at the end of a project that probably took you forever?
Well, a lot of the instruments out there, like if you go to Guitar Center, right, famous store, it's a big box store. 90% of everything hanging on the wall in Guitar Center is mass-produced in factories, and a lot of it done overseas. And you might not have skilled artisans, doing one step on every build in these large factories, right? They're trying to build these things as cheaply as possible. Like, I'll put it this way: the one bass that I actually bought and paid for that I own, it's kind of a crappy bass. It's a Fender Squier P bass. I've done some modifications on it, but all in all, it's about a $350 Fender, and I've had to do a lot of work to that thing to get it to play right, or play as well as a Fender can play. And the funny thing about that is, okay, $350. It costs me about that much money to buy one set of pickups and a bridge for one of my basses.
Wow. So that just shows the quality.
Like these and that. Forget the rest of the bass.
Yeah, you can't make those pots by yourself. You don't make those.
I gotta go to the companies that make those, and that's the thing, is I'm getting the good stuff. Pickups. There's a few companies I use. There's Kent Armstrong here in the United States. There's Delano. They're over in Germany. Every now and then I use Bartolini. There's another guy out of Nashville named Howard Ulyate. I mean, these are all masters at their craft. And then for hardware, I use a company called Hipshot. Their stuff is fantastic. It's not cheap, but it's also, being high quality, that comes through in the end product, right? I don't want to skimp on these in any way, form, or fashion.
Now, he said, what is Muck's favorite pickup?
If I had to pick one, I would say Delano. The reason being is they have the widest variety of different types of pickups, the widest range of different voices, And they really just are my ace in the hole. Like, I've never built a single bass where I used Delano pickups where the client did not love it. And they're made in Germany. You know, the guy that owns the company, his name is Reinhard Yadamzik, and he's just a brilliant individual. They cracked the code, man. They figured it out. They have a good thing going. And I've got Delano and about half the bases in my shop at a time. The other half will have Kent Armstrong. Kent Armstrong, he's referred to a lot of times as the godfather of pickups. I mean, this guy helped design pickup design for a lot of iconic brands that have been in business for over 30 years. If you've ever played a Ken Smith bass, that is Kent Armstrong's doing. He designed that pickup. If you've ever played a Jens Ritter bass, Kent was integral in designing those pickups. I mean, the list goes on. He's had his hand in a lot of what is out there that is iconic. So yeah.
Now on your high-end bass, how many pieces is the high-end bass?
How many what?
Pieces. Like, to put it together, like, how many pieces do you use?
Well, we'll take this one for example. All right. So the body alone, we have a core. We have large Wenge accent veneers. That's 3. Then maple accent veneers, 5, and then a top and a back. We've got a 7-piece body.
Some
3-piece neck, and then a fingerboard. And then there's a cap on the headstock. I'm trying to get it to where.
Yeah, you got it. What? This way. Yep.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it. It's there are the same. There's a top, and then there's 2 accent veneers between the maple. So it's kind of an intricate process. It's not really zooming in. Yeah, you can see it there.
You need to make a Tatuaje edition.
What was that?
You need to make a Tatuaje edition.
Right.
With the monsters all over. You ever seen the monster series they got going there?
Yeah.
You put all the monsters all over the guitar. You know, play something.
I've had some ideas like that where I'd like to do something kind of off the beaten path.
That'd be crazy. Stuff you make is absolutely beautiful. I mean, that's why I said to you, I was like, dude, I got to get you on. I got to see all these things, feel all these things out, and talk to you a little bit about all these different bases. They're all phenomenal, man. And it's the funny thing is so you've never actually been trained. Nobody's ever taught you.
What was that? Say that again. I'm sorry.
No one's ever taught you, like how people go to school to be a luthier. Like, you never went to school, did you?
No. When I started working out of this shop, at the time it was owned by a company called Birdsong Guitars, and I knew that owner for a good while. When I tried to get my thing off the ground, it was not successful at first. And I called him up and said, hey, can I come pick your brain and get some ideas on how to get this thing off the ground? So I did. And at the end of our conversation, he said, get your bench and bring it here, set it up, continue to do your repair work, help us out, and start your company. So he opened up this shop, his machinery, he put his resources, everything out there to help me. And that's a big thing that I want people to know is anything that you see me doing that resembles success is the result of other people believing in me, giving their time, their resources, what have you. It's through the giving of other people that are in my corner that have allowed me to become successful. So I don't take any of it for granted. It's really it's something that, like I mentioned, when I show up every day and get my head in the right space, it's something that I'm really, really honored to get to do. Because I could be out digging a ditch right now or flipping a burger. It's like that. there are so many worse ways it could have gone for me. And to lose sight of that would be silly.
But you never gave up was the key, because you said you pretty much failed at first.
Yeah. I went to this little self-storage place that had some office front buildings, and I thought, okay, I'm going to get one of those. I'll set my machinery up in the back, the little bit that I had at the time. And in order to pay rent, I'll just teach private lessons out of the front room. Well, that lasted 1 month because I couldn't get enough private lessons in there to pay the rent. But man, I really put all my chips into this. I stepped away from a teaching gig. I was teaching private music lessons at a music school, and I had about 50 students a week. I left that to start this, and it was a rocky start, but I didn't give up because I knew deep down inside that this was really a calling and something that I was supposed to do. I felt it in my gut. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's one of those things where you just know that you know that you know, and it wouldn't let me go, so I decided not to let it go.
What did you do before you were making guitars?
I was a full-time bass player. And
oh yeah,
full-time musician, and I was teaching private lessons, and doing a little bit of repair work.
So this has been your life.
Yeah,
from start to finish.
Yeah. What's funny is I mentioned, if somebody were to tell me 15 years ago that I'd be doing this today, I would have said they're crazy. Absolutely out of their minds. Like, no way. Because I had heard all the horror stories from other builders about the financial instability you encounter as a builder. And I thought, well, I'll never want to do that. But, back to 2008, it got pretty financially unstable there as a musician. And I got to thinking, well, what else could I lose, right? If I try it and flop, it's not like I'm out anything. I can always go back to what I'm doing now, but that wasn't working.
So the best way to put it is 2008 was the best, worst year of your life.
I'd say so in a lot of ways. Yeah. Yeah. It was a year that forced me to make some decisions. And my daughter was one of the key factors. It's like, okay, now I've got this little one. It's great that I'm a musician. I can be home. My wife was working at the time. So I was home with her when she was a baby during the daytime hours. And I had all that time with her, just my daughter and my dog. And we would chill, and I could do my musician thing. I could get on the laptop and network and book gigs. But it came to the point to where I needed to do something with my daytime hours that were taking better care of the family. And eventually my wife stepped out of her job, and it was all on my shoulders. And that's when I decided to just really jump in with both feet.
And when you started, you obviously made a couple of guitars that were bass guitars that were fails. No. So right off the bat, you were just going full strong.
Yeah.
Did you save your first guitar you ever made?
I still have it. Yeah. It's in a corner. So I mentioned Birdsong Guitars, and Scott, the owner of that company, he put his head luthier on me to walk me through my first build. His name was Jake. And what I love about the way Jake taught me was he would tell me, okay, you're going to take this piece, do that. And then he'd leave. He wouldn't do anything for me. He left it to where I had to figure it out for myself. And Commissioner, I was green. Like, I had no background in woodworking whatsoever. There were times I had to come back inside and say, hey, Jake, where's the on button for the jointer? Or how do I turn on this planer? Because I didn't know. He'd laugh and show me, and I'm like, okay, cool. And the first bass I built, number 001, was successful. It worked. I gigged on that thing for a year. I recorded on it. I mean, like I said, I turned it into a pickup testing bass after I retired it and modified the design. And this was still all on my own dime. I started bass number 2 and number 3, and then I had a really cool opportunity fall into my lap. While I was here one day, my friend Scott with Birdsong gets a phone call from the president of what's called TMEA. This is Texas Music Educators Association, TMEA. And they were going to have their big convention down in San Antonio in about a month's time from this phone call. And they had Mr. Mike Huckabee coming in to be their keynote speaker. And you might remember Mike. He ran for president years ago. Mike is real big on music education in public schools. He's a big advocate for that. And he also plays bass. So TMEA wanted to thank him for coming and speaking for free. He offered to just come on his own dime and speak for free. And they wanted to pay him with a bass because they knew he played bass. Well, they called Birdsong. And in their conversation, they found out that Birdsong makes short scale basses. And they were like, oh, well, Mr. Huckabee prefers a full scale bass. And Scott goes, oh, no problem. We got Muckelroy basses right here. And he hands me the phone. And we're talking. And what they're wanting to have built for Mr. Huckabee was very fancy. Very fancy. Whereas what I had already built was very simple. It was very rudimentary and functional. So you talk about a vertical learning curve, again, being thrown into it. I didn't even have time to overthink it and psych myself out. I just jumped in and I did it. And so that second bass that I actually completed was like a Cadillac, where my first one was a Toyota Corolla.
Wow.
Right? And I had 1 month to build it. So I was on that bass every day, all day for that entire month. And they presented it to him, got to meet the man, got some pictures. And that, I got paid. TMEA has a budget. They paid me. Holy crap. That was a game changer. I was like, now I can order supplies. I see how this works. Okay. But that was really like the first domino that got tipped over, that kind of started the ball rolling. Because after that, there were some people that were there and they talked and they shared pictures, and that started good word of mouth. Not a week after that whole event, I had 2 orders come in. And there we go. You know, the rest is history.
Wow.
And yeah, and I don't really talk about that a whole lot, especially on my social media, because it sometimes people can identify that as a political stunt. I'm one of the least political people you're ever going to meet. Right? I don't even go there on my own social media. I don't post about politics. I don't do it. It's just, I like those to be face-to-face conversations over a cigar or coffee. You know, I'd just rather do that than just yell at people behind my screen. I don't want to go there.
That's a no-win situation.
So not a whole lot of people know the Mike Huckabee story. And I mean, I didn't see it as a political move on my part. I saw it as an opportunity to build a base for somebody and get paid. And I would have been silly to turn that down.
Well, what it seems like that I noticed from this whole conversation is the gentleman you said, Bird. What's the name of the company?
Birdsong.
Birdsong. That gentleman seen that you were highly capable of doing this stuff on your own. So he forced you into a corner to make you do it on your own.
Yeah, totally. Scott, I think he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing when he handed that phone to me. I think if he had any doubts that I wasn't going to be able to pull it off, he would have steered the conversation in a different direction and called somebody else.
That's a pretty phenomenal story, honestly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Scott is a great friend of mine. We're still in contact even today. From time to time, I'll build necks for his bases. Got a batch of them going right now. I mean, there's so much of Scott still in this shop. You know, on the north wall, there's these bohemian blankets hanging. I mean, he's, you know, he's just this woodsy hippie guy, and that's just how he did it. And yeah, just a great person. I mean, Scott's a big reason I'm doing this.
Shout out to Scott, man, because
Heck yeah, heck yeah.
shout out to Scott.
Anybody that knows him would back up what I'm saying tenfold. I mean, he's just that genuine to all the people that he comes in contact with. There were days in the shop where my face hurt from laughing so much because he's a riot. He's a riot. And he eventually moved his operation to his home shop, and I took over the whole place. And that was another one of those big leaps of faith, where I went from paying just a small portion of subletted rent to Scott to paying for the whole place on my own. And yeah, man, just like when that opportunity came up to build that base, for Huckabee, it's like I can't be too hesitant to take those leaps of faith and those jumps, because if I do, I'll psych myself out and I'll peter out.
I mean, at this point, I don't think there's nothing that couldn't be thrown at you. I mean, you've already went through the curveballs. You already made it through 5 years of business. I mean, get game ready, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of companies, when they get to this point, is they're presented with the option of going big. And for a lot of builders out there, what that means is going to Korea or Japan or China and finding a big factory that makes necks and bodies, and they would basically make a CNC copy imprint of your design and make you hundreds or thousands of bodies and necks overseas, ship them back to you, and you put them together here in the States, and there's your volume, and you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on that, and that's just a mountain of debt that I don't think I want to take on. Not to mention the lack of quality control.
Yeah, I think that would be an absolute terrible move for somebody like you, because you care about your products, and when you go to that next level, your products ain't your products no more. They ain't what you're delivering to people.
Yeah. So, again, a lot of parallels there in the cigar industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
We see these companies that get too big for their own britches, and they outsource to the lowest bidder. What happens to the quality?
Goes down.
We won't mention any certain brands here, but you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, so it's the same kind of deal. For me, as far as growth, kind of playing it by ear right now. We'll see how things go with coronavirus and how the buying patterns of bass players evolve over the coming months and years. If the growth presents itself, then yeah, employees would be the next step. Bigger shop space would be the next step. And I don't ever try and force those next steps. I let them happen very organically. When the right people come along, I typically know it. And it's worked out so far. And if I ever have to go back to being totally solo, that's fine. I can do that. That's what I'm doing right now.
Now, I know you cut into your daily routine to do this interview, which I really appreciate. One thing I wanted to see was what you talked to me about the other day was that little stamper that you said that you got at. And I want you to explain that where you're at.
You talk about the old one?
Yeah.
Right. Let me see. Is there a way for me to turn my? I guess not.
Now that's how you individually stamp all your guitars.
Each one of these has a number on them. That's number 7. These are really old. These are from the early 1900s. So someone took the time to make this wooden box by hand. There's no name. There's no year. My buddy Scott gave these to me, and he said that these were purchased at an auction, and they had someone look at them, and they said they dated them back to the early 1900s, late
Wow.
teens, 20s. So the story behind these is like, I wonder how many craftsmen stamped their work with these exact number stamps, and then here I am today holding them. So yeah, little things like that I take a lot of pride in. There's another special tool that I have with me. This little feather edge file. It's kind of hard to see the little teeth on it, but it's very thin. I use these on the frets, on the little corners of the fret ends. This handle was made by another luthier named Gene Matisco. Gene was originally from the Pennsylvania area. Super pro luthier. He's been at it for about 40 years. This guy builds acoustic guitars that cost 40 grand.
Wow.
Yeah, he's a total master, but he's also one of these guys that spends a little too much time in the shop, and he's become a hermit, and to the point to where he's socially crippled. So we had some interesting conversations, but Gene taught me a lot. He taught me a lot about doing good fret work, the basic mechanics of what set great instruments apart from okay instruments. And again, this was one of those things where I didn't ask for it. He just started telling me. And it was really cool how that all came about. So yeah, it's a little peek into my world.
For real, I mean, it's unbelievable to see all the stuff that you've made from scratch. I mean, that's the key. The key to the whole situation is you made all this stuff from scratch.
Right.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it's like I said, man, I love getting to do this. It's something I don't take for granted. Golly.
But I'm gonna get it going. I'll be sure to have you back on the show. Maybe we could get some of these guys in the cigar industry on the show.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, I just want to let everybody know, getamuck.com. That's where you can contact Brady if you decide you want to have a bass guitar made. Brady's very knowledgeable. Even if you have some questions, I'm sure he'll answer them for you. You got to start somewhere. Second, what cigar are you smoking tonight?
Tonight, that's a good question. There's an Osaka that's been staring at me in the humidor. You know what? I think I'm going to bust out one of those Padrones of the 1926.
You love those things, huh?
Yeah, they're quite good. And then I've got some Liga provided the T52s. Probably have one of those. Call it a night.
So you're going to smoke a couple cigars to catch up.
Yeah, man. I had that Tatuaje last night, and that was an hour and 40-minute smoke. I was like, well, that's good. I'm done.
I actually just look at this friggin' thing. Look at this thing go.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Smoking that new Killer Bee Swarm.
Yeah,
so
man.
The math on it is it's stacking dimes, as they call it.
Yeah.
Until it falls on my chest or something. Falls on my belly. But man, Brady, I appreciate you coming on the show, talking with me. It was an absolute pleasure. I will be sure to harass some people and get them on the show with us.
Absolutely.
I would love to get maybe Pete Johnson or maybe Matt Booth on the show. Y'all could go at it. That'd be amazing. We got a Nick Laramie, who's in the party. I'm pretty sure he works for Drew Estate. In the party, so we heard you talking about the T52, which you'll be smoking tonight. And then we got Boston Jimmy. Well, listen, you have a great rest of your day. I'm sure I'll see you tonight because we chat almost every night.
That's right.
Everybody else who joined us on Facebook, chatted up with us, appreciate all you. Tune into the next episode, New England Cigar Militia Live. And make sure you check out Brady. Brady's got to get his ass back to work because it's probably 2,000 degrees in his shop. And that's pretty much it. I mean, take care, all. Thanks, Brady.
Thank you. Thanks, brother. We'll see you soon.
So there you have it. That episode has been concluded. Shout out to Brady. Absolute pleasure having him on the show. I learned a lot more than I ever knew about bass guitars. He makes incredible products. I mean, 100% top-notch, grade A stuff. After talking to him for months and months at a time now, I know that this guy will not send out a bass to you if it ain't top shape, if it ain't the best of the best, the buku buku. So if you want a bass, I have on the bottom, getamuck.com. Shout out to Brady. This is what I try to do. I try to bring everybody, not just the cigar owner or the cigar brand, try to bring regular people from the cigar community that have special talents. And Brady he's above and beyond special talent in the cigar industry, in the bass guitar industry. So I'll be getting going. I'm actually going to be heading up to Twins, go hang out with Steve Saka. So anybody who's in here in the New Hampshire area, Massachusetts area, get your ass up there. I'll be up there about an hour, hour and a half, smoke some cigars, bother Steve a little bit. But that's about it. This is the conclusion, New England Cigar Militia Live. Your host, the Commish. I hope all y'all have a great day. And please be sure to follow us on YouTube. Show some support. I'm out.